Welcome to the resume workshop. My name is Julie McLaughlin. I am the Director of Career Counseling and Professional Development at the CDO. I have been here for almost 14 years. I'm about to have my work anniversary. And today, I hope you're all here in the right place. We are here to talk about the resume. All right. So we are going to cover the purpose and the goal of a legal resume, the components of a resume, formatting, go over some do's and don'ts, and then we'll have time for questions. I should say that this workshop is scheduled for an hour. It should not take the full hour unless you have a million questions. So I will hopefully be able to give you all some time back at the end of this session. All right. So, what is the purpose of a resume? So your resume is a marketing document. I know that's not how a lot of people think about it. They think of it as kind of a summary of everything that they've done. But an employer is hiring you to work, and your goal is throughout the whole application process is to demonstrate that you have the ability to do the work that they want you to do and add some value to their office. So your resume should serve as a written document that provides a summary of the most relevant skills and knowledge that you have to offer to an employer. So most employers are not making their hiring decisions based upon the name of the place that you worked before. They're looking at the skills. So one of the little reminders, if you go into our core resource library, which has lots and lots of information on application materials, you will see a skills inventory checklist. And that's something you might want to go to look up, different skills, because sometimes it's hard to think like, what are my skills? What did I do here? And that can help you kind of figure out what that looks like. Okay. Who reads your resume? I've talked to a lot of recruiters. They have informed me that a lot of the time they are spending 1 minute to do an initial review of your resume. It means within 1 minute, they may be saying, okay, I want to take a closer look at this, or they may be tossing that resume in the trash. Because of that quick review, you want to be able to make a favorable impression and highlight your skills very, very quickly. Remember, it is a summary, not a biographical account of everything you've ever done. So because that review is so quick, you want to have a one-page resume. You want to make sure that it is well organized and well formatted in a way that makes it easy to read and find the information the reader is looking for. And then once you're selected, it may have multiple additional reviews. So that first review may get you in the door or not. And then if they say, okay, I think this is someone we want to interview, then you're going to get looked at by more than just the recruiting department or the HR department. You're going to get looked at by attorneys and other people who are involved in that process. So you also want to make sure that it is accurate and thoughtful. So if you say something on it, you better be prepared to talk about it. If they ask you like, oh, well, what did you do at this, while you worked at, such and such company, and you don't remember, and you just say, oh, I don't know, or they read the bullet point and they ask you about it, and you say, I don't really remember that project. That's not great. So for everything on the resume, you should be ready to talk about it and provide additional details if asked. Okay. What goes on the resume? So every single one of your resumes should include your name and contact information, an education section, an experience section, and if you have them, a languages section. Optional sections. Certifications, again, you wouldn't include that if you don't have it. Same with publications and same with interests. I'm sure you all have interests, but it's not required that you put those on the resume. You may choose to do that. All right, we're going to go over each of these components. So I would highly recommend that you use a header. This is an option. You can find it on Word. It should also be available in Google Docs if you're using that. But use a header because it gives you more space on the resume, and it's its own little section. You want to have your name. It's got to be in larger font, and it should be bold. That's one of those things where I looked at a resume just the other day. The name was in the same size font, not bold as everything else. It was kind of hard to see. They want to see your name up front. Address. Yes, you want to use a physical address. I know that sounds crazy because right now you're thinking, well, why would anyone need my physical address? They don't need that to contact me. Part of it is they may want to see where it is that you live. You know, that's something that tells them something about you. And that's why you know, if you're from Chicago, but you're applying for jobs, you're now in DC, and then you apply for jobs back in Chicago, it would be helpful for you to have a Chicago address on there so they can see that you have a tie to that place. Also, I've heard from recruiters that when they are processing applications, they are putting information into a database. One of those fields includes address. So if you don't have your physical address, they can't fill out that field. That can harm you in the process. All right, you want a telephone number. That is how they may reach out to you, or an email address. That is the other option for how they're going to reach out for you. We recommend using your law school address. That's a professional email address, and that will, you know, be a good way for them to realize, you know, who you are and where you're at school. If you are an intellectual property student, you've taken the patent bar, you have a registration number, you may put that in the header as well. Okay, here are some samples, 4 different samples of Jane Doe's resume. As you can see, these take up different amounts of space. If you have lots and lots of work experience, you may want to go with that top example. It will not take up a lot of room on your resume, and you can fit everything else. If instead you are, you know, maybe you're coming straight out of college, you don't have that much work experience, you're looking to take up space, go with the second example. The temporary, permanent, or the 2 addresses are something you may want to use again if you are applying for a job in a location where you are from and that's not going to be otherwise clear. You want them to show that you have an address somewhere else. So you can, in those cases, sometimes use, you know, 2 different addresses. Don't go with this option if, for example, you're from Chicago, but you're not applying to jobs in Chicago. There's no need to put the address on there unless it's pertinent to the job search. All right. The next section on the resume, right below the header, should be education. So you may have your education section at the bottom of your resume, especially if you have been working for a while. Move it back up. That's because you are now in law school, you're applying for legal jobs. They want to see first, where are you in law school? So be very precise with the names of your organizations. I'm sorry, of your educational institutions. This is the name, the official name of GW. It is the George Washington University Law School. Sometimes I see sometimes I see School of Law. Get it correct. That will obviously reflect well upon you. The George Washington University Law School. Your educational institutions should be in reverse chronological order. So GW is going at the top. Some additional reminders. This is typically for degree granting schools only. So if, for example, you transferred or, you know, you only attended some place for a small period of time, that typically is not going to go in the education section. If you've received a graduate certificate at a school in a way that can be a degree and, you know, that can potentially go there. If you are a law school transfer student, you may want to list your previous law school. And the reason for doing that is you may not have very much to offer from GW at this point. So initially list your school that you started at. Another reminder, the degree you are getting from GW is a Juris Doctor or a JD. It is not a Juris Doctorate. Again, this can vary from school to school, but that's what's going on with GW. You want to list your graduation dates as opposed to dates attended. So if you're a 1L, that's May 2028. You can put JD expected May 2028 or Juris Doctor expected May 2028, that all of those are correct. Undergrad, again, if you graduated in May 2025 or May 2023 or June 2023 or whatever it might be, just put the graduation date. Law school GPA, if you're a 1L, you don't need to worry about this yet, but we recommend putting it on there. Definitely if it's above a 3.0. But you always have the option to put that on there regardless of what your GPA is. Sometimes I see students with very good GPAs who for whatever reason don't include it. I think if they don't see the GPA, they're going to assume it wasn't that good. You do not have to include undergraduate GPAs. Let's see. Okay. Education details. So, undergraduate thesis. I think this is a good thing to include if you have done one, because they are going to be looking for research skills, and so thesis is great. Sorry, someone is coming into the room. Coursework, I don't think I would include undergraduate coursework. If they want to know what you did as an undergrad, you can put that in. But I would say, really only, you basically, I think you want to do undergraduate coursework, they're going to ask for a transcript. And so otherwise you don't
Thank
really
you so much.
to list it. Sorry, what?
You didn't need to do that. Thank you.
All right. Awards and honors, absolutely. I'm going to give you a sample, but if you've received any awards as an undergraduate, if you've potentially received any, you graduated with honors, that can be included there. I would recommend it. Same, with law school. Transfer students, again, if you're in that category, we can talk about it a little bit more. Do not list your high school institution or LSAT scores on your resume. They may have been there before, but don't include those now. Okay. So here is a sample education section for a typical first full-time student for a 1L. A couple things I want you to note. You always want to include locations, physical locations, as well as the dates. The location should line up with the institutions. You're going to do the same thing when you get into your experience section. So GW Law School is located in Washington, D.C. That's why those are on the same line. The degree you are expecting is going to happen in May 2028. Those are why those are on the same line. So you can see here, if you graduated, summa cum laude, magna cum laude, something like that, you can put that on the line with your degree. And then in the honors section, you can list other honors that you received as an undergraduate. Again, if you've received any honors from GW, you can put those there as well. There's the thesis, study abroad programs. Don't list them separately. List them under your undergraduate institution because, again, you did not get a degree from that school. You just studied there. You also want to be consistent with how you are if you're abbreviating your degree. So if you use JD, use BA. If you use Juris Doctor, use Bachelor of Arts. You just want to make sure that everything looks like you've spent the time to make sure it's all consistent throughout. Okay, now we're going to get into the media section, which is going to be your experience section. This is a second section on the resume. You want all relevant experience. It does not matter if it was a volunteer internship, if it was part-time, or if it was paid full-time. The importance is the experience you gained and the skills you acquired. It is not about only, full-time paid jobs. You definitely want to include the name of the employer and the geographic location, your job title, and the dates that you worked. Note that for this section, you do need to include start and end dates because that is very relevant to a job. When did you start working there? When did you end? You can put in seasonal dates like summer. As an undergraduate and then again in law school, you are probably going to be working over your summers. And so it's fine to say summer instead of saying, May to August. It's up to you. Either one is completely fine. You don't need to include the exact dates of employment. One thing to think about, and some things I'll get asked about, is if you have a gap in your experience. So no one is going to be that concerned about a summer gap or a semester gap where you weren't doing work. But I think if you have graduated and you took, a year off and there's nothing on your resume to explain that gap, first, I guess my question to you would be, what did you do during that time? If you did something and you've chosen not to put it in there, think about putting it in there because that's something employers are likely to ask about it. If you didn't, then just be prepared to talk about it. What did you do at that time? Because they're going to be curious. If you find yourself not having enough experience or you're struggling in this section, you may want to include some of your undergraduate activities that took up more time. So, if you were like an editor of your school newspaper, that may have been almost like a part-time job. And frankly, the kind of work that you did may be very relevant to the work you would be doing as a lawyer. So you may want to include that as experience instead of just under education. All right. Describing your experience. So you really want to be specific. You don't want to embellish, but you want to be specific. So try to identify the discrete tasks you performed and any outcome or value that was added to the employer. So you want to really be showing the depth of your understanding and experience because again, they're hiring you for what it is that you did. And if it's really vague, their takeaway is going to be this person didn't really do anything. We have sample job descriptions in, again, the resource library where you can find some examples of these types of things. Again, you want to emphasize your accomplishments and how your work was used to advance the mission of the organization. We have a list of action verbs as well as that skills inventory checklist that I mentioned. If you're struggling to come up with what did I do, you want to start each of your bullet points with an action verb in the active voice. And you want to try to avoid using things like assisted with or helped with, because then we don't get a sense of what you did exactly. To me, assisted is a vague word. If you assisted with, discovery preparation for a trial, what does that mean you did? Did you carry a briefcase or did you compile documents? If you compile documents, write compiled documents. Those are much more substantive and you don't want to leave things like that out. Okay. So drafting your experience. Here you can see, and I'm going to let you read through these, some examples of bullet points that might be used for this job, which was a customer service associate at Rite Aid. So I'll let you all read through those. Okay. So the not very helpful one, it's correct, right? And this is what they did. Conducted cashier and customer service duties. Okay. But you probably read that and think like, okay, I get it. The second one provides some more description. So that's a little bit better. But the best one highlights the skills. You did work accurately. You did work on time. You also were able to, help out and, resolving customer concerns. That shows some interpersonal skills. And obviously you were good at it because you were recognized for it. So this is great. This is a non-legal job. This is not a job where you're doing research and writing, but you can see that if you have those bullet points, that is so much more impressive than the first example. All right. So here is another example. And this one is for a legal internship, something that you might do over your first summer. So again, I'll give you a little time to read through these. Okay, so the first one uses my not favorite word, assisted. Assisted clerks with research and writing. What in the world does that mean? Does anyone know what assisting with research and writing is? Did you do research and writing? Because if you did, start with that. There we go. The second example does say researched and drafted, much, much stronger than assisted. And it's fine to use assist in the second example. Assist the judge. Yes, that's fine. But the last one really gets into the depth of what this person did. So this was a complex issue. The student, so we know, you know something about breach of contract law in Maryland. And this very, specific example, you drafted a memorandum and discussed it with the judge, which is fantastic because that means the judge valued the work that you did. Okay, moving along, politics and controversial issues. So what's controversial to one person may not be controversial to someone else. And whether or not to delete something really depends on your individual circumstances and your future plans. So this is something you really want to talk to your career counselor about if you are concerned. Lots of students have worked on the Hill. That is completely normal. And unless you are planning to, switch sides, and you used to work for the Democrats, now you're working for the Republicans, that's, going to be something that's going to get more, eyebrows raised. But, the fact that you worked in politics is not in and of itself controversial. All right. Language skills. So language skills are really important, and I would put them on a resume if you have, language skills outside of English. But again, you want to be honest because someone might start talking to you in French and you don't want to not be able to respond to them. Okay. Certifications, publications, and interests. So this all depends again on how relevant they are to the job. So if you worked like, let's say as an accountant and you have a CPA, that may be very relevant to an accountant position, but much less relevant to a legal position. So again, this is something I would sort of take the time to say, is this something that is going to be important to my legal job? Published work, however, is almost always relevant because it shows strong research and writing abilities. If you've done, one or two things, you can probably fit those on the resume in a publication section. If you have a lot, you may want to put only some of them on there. And, you could share other ones if you have time. One thing I see students often do is if they publish something, they include the hyperlink on the resume. I would not do that. I think, if they want to read it, they can go find it or you could send it to them. But for the most part, the point that you're trying to get across is I wrote something and someone published it. Not, do you want to read this whole thing? So don't worry about that. That will take up extra space. An interest section, it's optional, but it's recommended. I think that this gives employers something to talk about with you in an interview that isn't just What did you do for work? What are you studying? You know, but I always tell students, make sure it's interesting. So if your interests are travel, running, and cooking, that's, you know, a lot of people's interests. But can you make it more interesting? Is it traveling, you know, through South America? Is it, you know, making my way through Julia Child's cookbook? So, you know, come up with more for interests, and that will make it even more of a conversation topic. Okay. Other pointers. So you always want to be using the past tense because these are past positions, unless you're doing something right now. So put all your verbs into the past tense. Don't use I or my. You want to use details and examples that will prompt someone to ask more questions about it. You do not need to use complete sentences. You do not need to use periods at the end of bullet points. If you do, just again, make sure you're consistent throughout the document. Okay, other things to leave out. This is not the time to be super creative and fun. We are not in, you know, an arts program. We're in law school. So no strange formatting, fonts, colors, borders, leave it all out. If it's in there, take it all out. Other than maybe underlining, you know, sections or dividing them by lines, you don't want to have any other strange formatting. You definitely don't want any color or weird font sizes. Don't include an objective section. That absolutely other types of jobs include those, not legal jobs. You don't need to put your computer skills in because either they're presumed, like Microsoft Office or, you know, Westlaw and Lexis, or you don't need them probably for the job. References go on a whole separate document. You can find that in our resource library. So don't take up space to include your references on your resume. Personal interests that would be misconstrued or controversial. I mean, I hope that goes without saying. Marital status, age, photo, you don't need any of that either. All right. Also, please make sure your font size is 11 point or larger. Picture some, you know, little old lady trying to read your resume and it's in this teensy tiny font. She can't read it. That's how your resume gets tossed. Keep your margins at least at 0.7 inches on all sides. So when you're working on the resume, you want to use it in Word, and that's what you'll send to your career counselor so that we can, you know, make edits and send it back to you. But when you send it to employers, put it in PDF and make sure that PDF conversion doesn't mess up the formatting. If it does, you want to go back and fix it. The PDF, that means they can't, you know, they will not get messed up formatting. It will look exactly how it looks when you send it over. Use a professional conservative font. These are some examples. Bullet points, they're not required, but they do make it easy to read. So I would recommend using those. Keep your formatting consistent. Again, italics, bold, caps, abbreviations, read through it and just do a quick scan to make sure it's consistent throughout the document. And then finally, do not exceed 1 page. Okay. Work with us. That is what we're here for. This is a document that's going to change. When you come up with your first 1L full resume, you're probably not going to change it that much throughout the year. You might add your GPA, you might add some activities or leadership, but that's essentially going to be the same. Once you get your first legal job, that resume starts changing. You are going to, over time, have to remove things or change things, and you're going to add things. So work with our office. I have students who come in every semester. We do a little resume check. It's quick, but we make sure that that resume is still working for that student. Resource library on core application materials you can find here at D. Under that, you will find all sorts of information about resumes, you know, sample resumes and other guidance materials. Okay, questions? I know there's a question in the chat. For patent agents, yeah, you can write USPTO reg number and then include the number. And I probably have a sample for you if you reach out to me. Other questions?
Yeah, when you were talking about publications,
Yeah.
would like things published in academic journals be the sort of thing you're talking about?
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah. So you can put the name of the publication, the name of the journal, sort of like a blue book, type format. Doesn't have to be that exact. But yeah, and that will be great. Don't know what just happened to my screen. Other questions? If no one has any questions, you are all free to go. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon. We took only 35 minutes, so you have extra time back. And yeah, please, if you haven't met with a career counselor to review your resume, once you get it up to snuff, you can go ahead and schedule that appointment. And we look forward to working with you throughout this year and your future years. Thank you all.